Hey everybody, welcome to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I'm Alana Ivan with Truly Great Life, and we are on way number 11. Way number 11 is the character strength of humility. Humility. Okay, so I'm sure already you're getting some kind of reaction to this word. It can be a charged one, and perhaps you never really thought of the quality of humility as a strength. Maybe by the end of this recording, you will have changed your mind even a little baby bit. So start with thinking of where you are at with this idea of humility, and maybe someone you know who has this in spades. How are you interpreting just that word humility? Okay, so as always, I want to jump in with definitions, okay, what humility is and what it isn't. So, humility is like a modesty, okay? Humility is where you are going to let your actions or accomplishments or behavior or writings speak for themselves. Right? You don't necessarily need to toot your own horn, okay? And more fundamentally, there's, you don't think you're more special than some might say than you really are, or you can look at it as you don't think you're more special than anybody else, right? So humility is not, I'm thinking now of Wayne's, we're not worthy. It's not this like, oh my God, I'm standing in greatness and what am I doing here and I'm nothing and you're something. It's not this like self-diminishment. To be humble is not necessarily to make yourself or to think of yourself as small when it comes to, let's say, other people, okay? Whatever your religion is or your spiritual practice, there might be a sense of humility there where there is, a sense of creator or divine or spirit or God or however that is for you, that is great, and you're, humbled before that. But let's keep this on that realm of other people. And true humility, I think, is just knowing that everybody else at core has just as much right as you to take up space here. Everybody else at core has just as much a place here on earth in whatever they're doing as you do. That I think would be one way to look at humility. You really don't think you're better than another person at core. Let's say you're somebody who has more than another person materially, okay? Do you think you're better than that person, right? So we could say, or do you think you're morally better than another person? Do you think you have more good deeds than another person? And then you judge them, right? So a humility could be like an accurate self-assessment of yourself, a self-awareness of your, let's say pluses and minuses, of your strengths and your weaknesses, of the things maybe you get to work on and things that, you feel competent in and confident in, and having that grace to realize that in someone else, whether it's a family member or a colleague or a student or whatever, that they're going to have differences. And just because they're different doesn't mean they're wrong. And just because they're different doesn't mean it's worse than you or you're better than them or that they're better than you. And we're in these really interesting, I know I keep mentioning it, but we're in these interesting times with technology where we are seeing other people all the time. It used to be that like our view, our vision of what was out there was very limited to the neighborhood, the street, the village, whatever, and then like comes radio, and then comes television, and now computers, internet, phones, so it's portable. Like we are exposed to the other, what others have, what others share, what others do, what others experience all the time, okay? So if you're one of those people who is putting that stuff out there, right? And, at this point, I'm guilty of that because I'm creating these, right, recordings. But are you aware of what you're putting out there? And are you trying to do it from a place of understanding and humility in the definition of like, you aren't any better. You may have something to teach. You may have something to share. You may have something that can help another person, okay? And is there a humility there? Is there a humbleness about it? Is there a recognition that just because you may be further along in a path than somebody else, or you may have accomplished more materially than someone else, or spiritually than someone else, or relationship-wise than someone else, can you still have a humility there that it doesn't necessarily make you in a position to judge that you are better than that other person, right? We never know what someone is going through. And so to have the humility that at core you are not any more deserving of space, I'm speaking generally here. I'm not speaking about like people who maybe like commit crimes or, things that, you're like, they don't deserve to take any breathing space. I don't want to go there. But just generally speaking, can you be humble? And how is your self-assessment, right? How do you look at yourself? So I think for many of us, depending on how we grew up, all right, depending on the environment we are in, depending on relationships we've had, some of us may be like overly humble, right? And not thinking that we're worthy, right? And not thinking that we're even good enough. Or so where are you at in this kind of spectrum of like feeling self-confident, feeling that you have a valid reason to exist, feeling that you are affirmed in your existence in whatever it is you're doing and whoever you're doing it with, versus like, I'm not, overly humble versus like the hubris side, right? The arrogant side, the I'm God's greatest gift to everything and make way for me and, screw everybody else on that way. And you don't know what you're doing. And the thing about arrogance, right? So there are people who are great. They've achieved whatever their goals are in a way that maybe benefits many people. Let's say they've created organizations or companies or discoveries or poetry that moves the heart, whatever it is, who still retain a humility, who still have a humbleness, who for some it's almost a spiritual thing where they recognize that they're a vessel or a channel for which that to come through, and they, for whatever reason, were in that position to present that, right? I'm thinking from, my own tradition of Moses, right? Moses was known as one of the most humble people that ever existed. And it's one of the reasons that he was chosen to receive and to give the Torah. So I'm not going to go down that route. That's a whole different video I could do. But where in your life have you been too humble, maybe too self-deprecating, maybe too not like you hear a compliment, let's say, this one's a big one, okay? Especially for a lot of us women. You hear a compliment. What's your reaction? You hear a compliment about something you did, or maybe you look nice, especially like a lot of, oh no, whatever. What compliment triggers you, or where is something that you've been told something nice and you're like, no, you pushed it away. So is there something there? That could be, for example, an underuse of your character strength or I would say an overuse of humility, where you're like overly humble. You're not accurately assessing who you are. You don't have, whatever it is, there's stuff blocking your ability to see the reality of who you are. Because if you want to keep going with this humble thing, like, can you give someone else the credit? Like, that maybe they know what they're talking about too, that they see this in you? And are you a critical person? How much do you criticize others? How much do you think you know better? How much do you think you have the answers? How open are you to others' input, experience, thoughts, perspectives, okay? A humble person is not going to be threatened by a contrary, new, alternative thought or idea or point of view. If you're threatened by it, there might be something there with like an ego threat, right? Something is if you're threatened by someone's idea, information, point of view, there's something there that you feel fundamentally threatened by to your identity, or what you know is true, or what you believe, that you can't go there, right? If you think you know everything there is to know about a situation, if you think you've got all the information, if you think you've got all the data, if you think you know, okay, can you make room for the possibility that you get to be a little more, like maybe you don't know it all. And I know that, there's this need to be expedient, and there's this need to like just get it done with, or you want to get the information and move on, or, I'm thinking of my kids now, like, Ma, you're so old, and that was so long ago, and you don't understand, and that's not how it is, and blah, 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 and, there's, maybe it's just part of teenagehood, right? This like hubris, right? I think most of us will go through an arrogant stage at different times, with different things that, provoke that. And maybe it's part of the way we just manage information, right? I can't be bothered to be open about this. I've got other things to do. This is my decision. This is my way of thinking. And it's just easier, for whatever reason, for me to not be humble in this case, in the sense of like open to something else. Or if you're feeling very self-defensive, right? If you're feeling defensive, if you're like, what problem are you working on? So humility is this really interesting character strength. It's one that people, when they first find out, let's say that that's one of their top strengths, there's this misconception, kind of like with prudence that we talked about in an earlier recording, where it's like, humility, like that's humiliate. There's association with humiliating, and it's really it's a wonderful strength that, again, because these are all muscles that we have, we just may not be aware of them, we may not use them. Like if we had more people exercising their muscle of humility, again, not in a self-deprecating way, not in a diminishing way, but in just a way of recognition that maybe you don't have all the info, and maybe there's more to the picture, there's more, than meets the eye. And can you be curious to learn from others, to be open to others, to take others into consideration, and to know that even if you are, let's say, that expert, and you do have more experience, and you do know, like a humble leader, a great leader is one who there's a respect given, there's an openness and a respect to others, right? It's a really beautiful quality. It's something that, think about your own situation right now. If you're a parent, or if you're a teacher, or if you're in a relationship, how much humility do you bring to your relationship? If you're in a romantic relationship, how much humility do you bring to it? What is at stake? What do you feel threatened by that prevents you from using this strength, right? What's going on there that you feel compelled, or you just instinctively are like, I'm better than? Was it a message you got as a kid? You're better than everybody, Junior. You're the best, and everyone else. Like if you see the world as like a dog-eat-dog kind of world, and there's competition always, right, in the world. But do you see things as like a win-win, or, I am going to sing now, like, who knows the original Pete's Dragon, like, Helen Reddy, I love you. There's room for everyone in this world. Will everyone make some room? Okay, that's like taking humility as like a baseline, that it's not all about you. Now, the flip side, I'm going to take it again from my tradition. There's a beautiful story, if you will, or idea, that in one pocket you have a little piece of paper that says, I am nothing but dust. Okay? I am nothing but dust, and I don't remember the rest of it. But this idea of like really like, And then in the other pocket, you should have a note that says the world was created for me. Okay? So you can look that up. That is mentioned many times throughout the internet. But this idea of balance. So when we're talking about using our strength of humility, we're not talking about either or like one end of the spectrum versus another. Can you keep those two pieces of paper in your pocket? Like I am nothing but, I think it's dust and ashes or something. I don't have the Hebrew in mind. And then in the other one, like, and the world was created just for me. So it's a balance. And how can you bring that sense of respect to another person in whatever you have next after listening to this, whether it's a work thing or a personal thing? Can you make room for the possibility that you're wrong? Can you make room for the possibility that there's something you didn't think about? Can you make room for the possibility that there's another way to look at whatever it is, the example in your head right now? Okay? And it's humbling. And it's not the end of the world to be humbled if you're open to it and it helps you become more self-aware. You know, you can say about like the coaching profession, right? That coaching, what's the purpose of working with a coach, whether it's a sports coach or a life coach, or career coach, whatever coach, like it's to become more self-aware and other-aware, right? It's to bump up your awareness of whatever the situation is that brought you to coaching so that you can be more likely to achieve whatever those goals are, to be, do, have, experience, create, whatever it is that's calling to you. If we get in our own way out of a fear of being, let's say, making a fool of ourselves, all right, if we stop ourselves because our egos are just like, no, 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 we fear that ego death, right? What happens if? Okay, right? If you can get over the fear to a place of alignment with what your goal is, because it means so much to you, because it'll bring meaning to you, it'll be something that gives you joy, it's something that you want, whether that is, you know, to come up with a recipe or, you know, figure out a new song or write a letter to somebody or have that difficult conversation or at work, whatever it is, right? Humility is a great strength to bring in, okay? And another great thing about humility is it's like a promise. We are not stagnant. We're not meant to be stagnant. We're not fixed. We're not like done growing at a certain age or a certain decade or after a certain milestone. Like it is infinitely expandable what we can experience in our relationships and in our work, in our connections with people, in what we want to do. There is so much possibility out there. So if you're someone who has been like this know-it-all, like what problem are you working on here? What problem are you trying to solve? Is there something that you can, you know, quietly just open that door to this idea of humility, okay? It's beautiful. So one of the other things is you want to recognize where maybe you don't have the resources or the skills or the talents or the ability. So the minute you're ready to start learning something, you are exercising that muscle of humility, that strength of humility. So anyone who's taking a class, yay you are using that strength of humility. Anyone who's listening to, let's say, a lecture and learning from it and open to that learning. Anyone who's in a conversation or a debate, not where you're hammering your idea into someone else by force, right? By might. Where you're open to what else may be there. We are fallible human beings, people. We are not perfect. We do not have all the information. You want to look at the field of science? Things keep coming and growing and expanding. Things that are being revealed in the science world, in the cosmos, in the depths of the ocean, animal life, I don't know, choose whatever example you want. Like we are just scratching the surface. There's so much there. So much there. So how can we not be engaging with humility? When you feel 100% certain about something, just check yourself, right? I'm not saying you're not right. you're going to get to experience that or figure that out. But again, the more we can be, what's the story? Like the oak tree, right? Or the maple tree or whatever it is. And like, comes the hurricane, comes the wind, it's going over. At some point it will go over, but the bamboo, right, can sway in the wind. How much can you sway? Sway with me, okay? How much can you be flexible? How much can you roll with it? Humility is a strength that you have. You have, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. That is what we know from history and maybe your spiritual practice and now from the field of positive psychology. Like it is a universal strength that everyone has, and it's something that really helps relationships and understanding when people use it. Okay. So the other thing that I just want to mention real quickly is, think about a time when you were on the receiving end of someone who was arrogant and thought they knew better than you. Maybe that was earlier today, maybe that was yesterday, maybe it was years ago. How did that make you feel? Think of a time when you were given feedback that you were being really arrogant and cocky and like not, where maybe you steamrolled your way in a certain topic or in a certain situation. What feedback did you get, from others as a result of that? Where in your life do you tend to be more arrogant, know-it-all, my way versus respectful, open? So, for example, even if you are, let's say, a parent where there's definitely like a power dynamic there, right? And maybe you do know better. I mean, I love this with my kids when they think they know better, and it's like, and if you're a parent or a teacher, you know what I'm talking about. Like there are some things where if it's factual, again, let's say we're like 95% sure that we're right. But can we use humility? A reminder to myself, can I use my strength of humility not to diminish, my kids, and dismiss what they're saying, not to diminish and insult and put down and dismiss. Pardon me. Need more coffee. But, to respect. Okay, so humility is also tied with respect. Can you respect someone who may not know as much as you? Can you give someone the honor because they are a human being who's just in a different place in life, with different information, with different resources, with different experience, that they still have the right to an opinion? How you weight, right? The variable weight you give to that input or that opinion in a decision that needs to be made, that's something else. But can you make space for another person who has an opinion? In your family, in your work, in your school, in your community, in whatever. Can you make space in your relationships, in your intimate relationships? Can you be open to the possibility that you're not right? Because it's when we all know what it feels like to be around someone who's really full of themselves, right? And there's a reason one of the 7 sins is considered pride. Now there's a healthy pride and like unhealthy pride. So where on that range of pride do you fall, right? Do you really think you're better than everyone else? Do you really think you know better than everyone else? Do you really think everyone else is an idiot or too old or too politically different from you? That you can't hear them? Can you use your strength of humility there? Again, all of these ways I'm sharing to make happy, right? To pave the way for a happier day is, I'm assuming you want to have smoother relationships, smoother interactions with the people. Okay, so talking about the relationships part here, unless you're someone who loves to be combative, unless you're someone who loves a fight. So that I'm not sure how to, if that's what, like, that's your jam, then like I'm not sure how humility fits in. But maybe you can like be all excited for that argument and also keep the space open, and you can bring humor in, like we talked about earlier, Bring that humor in and your humility. They both begin with H-U-M. And you can hum. I mean, hum your way to happiness. So bring in the humor and bring in the humility. All right. That is, that's all I'm going to say about humility. Find ways, again, and it's not to feel bad about yourself, okay? Absolutely not. It's to feel more connected and more part of the human family. Ooh, human, H-U-M again. So we have humor and humility to be more human. Mic drop. That's it. I'm out. Thanks again for joining, and I will see you next time for way number 12.